From the outside, the Menendez family appeared to have it all: wealth, status, beauty, and a luxurious life that many only dream of. Jose and Mary Louise Kitty Menendez lived with their two sons, Lyle and Erik, in a sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills, California. A gated home, expensive cars in the driveway, and Ivy League dreams for their children. They seemed like the quintessential American success story. Welcome to the Crime Documentary. Jose Menendez was a Cuban immigrant who had built himself up from nothing. He rose through the corporate ranks, becoming a powerful executive at companies like RCA and later at Live Entertainment. His work ethic was unmatched and his ambition fierce. Kitty, a former schoolteacher from Illinois, played the role of the supportive wife, but many close to her said she was a woman unraveling in private. Together, they pushed their two sons hard, especially Jose. He expected perfection. And in public, the boys delivered just that. But behind the perfectly manicured hedges of their Beverly Hills mansion, a darker story was unfolding, one that would end in bloodshed. Lyle Menendez, the older brother, was charismatic and outgoing. He attended Princeton University but struggled academically. Erik, the younger sibling, was quiet and introspective, more reserved but also a nationally ranked tennis player. They were products of privilege, but beneath their polished appearances were young men under enormous pressure. Jose was described by colleagues and friends as brilliant but ruthless, both in business and at home. He imposed strict discipline, monitored his sons' every move, and had grand plans for their future, but something was off. Kitty, who had once been vibrant and social, had become reclusive and heavily medicated. She was known to be emotionally unstable and deeply unhappy in her marriage. Her relationship with her sons oscillated between overbearing affection and cruel detachment. On the night of August 20th, 1989, tranquility shattered inside the Menendez home. Kitty and Jose were watching TV in the den after a quiet evening. Suddenly, Lyle and Erik walked in with two 12-gauge shotguns. What followed was one of the most brutal and sensational crimes in American history. Jose was shot point-blank in the back of the head as he sat on the couch. Kitty tried to run, slipping on her own blood, screaming as her sons shot her multiple times. The crime scene was horrific. Over a dozen shotgun shells were recovered, bodies disfigured beyond recognition. And then, the boys waited. At 11:47 p.m., Lyle Menendez called 911 in a panicked voice, crying out, "Mary Loltink and the Gamper. Somebody killed my parents." But from the beginning, something didn't quite add up. When police arrived, they found no signs of forced entry. Nothing was stolen, no weapons were found. The Menendez brothers claimed they had been out at the movies and returned to find their parents slaughtered. Their grief appeared real. They wept publicly, hugged each other, attended the funerals in tears. But investigators noticed something odd in the weeks that followed. The brothers didn't retreat in mourning. They went shopping, lavishly. In the months after the murder, Lyle and Erik spent nearly $1 million, designer clothes, luxury cars, restaurants, travel. Lyle even bought a restaurant, all while the case remained unsolved. Was it grief? Was it shock? Or were these young men celebrating the end of their oppressive home life? As suspicion slowly turned toward them, the truth about what happened inside the Menendez home began to unravel. And what investigators would uncover was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. This was not just a case about murder. This was a case about power, trauma, family secrets, and whether two sons could be both victims and killers. From the outside, the Menendez family looked like the embodiment of the American dream. A sprawling Beverly Hills mansion, two handsome teenage sons, enrolled in elite schools, and a successful father running a booming entertainment business. But behind the closed doors of their opulent home, a much darker reality was festering. One filled with control, manipulation, and unimaginable pain. Jose Menendez was not only a millionaire entertainment executive, he was also a strict disciplinarian. To the world, he was charming and magnetic. At home, he ruled with an iron fist. There was no room for failure, disobedience, or weakness. Kitty Menendez, their mother, was once vibrant and full of dreams. But over time, those dreams were crushed by her husband's dominance. She spiraled into depression, relying heavily on alcohol and pills to cope with the life she now found herself trapped in. Friends later described her as paranoid, anxious, and emotionally unstable. As for Lyle and Erik, their lives weren't as carefree as the tabloids once suggested. Beneath their polished appearances were young boys grappling with fear, confusion, and trauma. According to their later confessions, Jose had sexually abused Erik for years. Lyle, they claimed, was also a victim. But in 1989, none of this was known. To neighbors and friends, the Menendez home was a mansion filled with laughter, tennis matches, and pool parties. Still, cracks had begun to show. Erik was increasingly withdrawn, prone to sudden outbursts. Lyle had been expelled from Princeton for plagiarism. Jose didn't just scold them, he threatened their futures, their financial security, even their place in the family. The pressure cooker was hissing louder each day. And then came the breaking point. On the evening of August 20th, 1989, the Menendez home in Beverly Hills became the scene of one of the most shocking family murders in American history. Inside the den, Jose and Kitty Menendez were watching television. The room was dark, the walls lined with luxury decor and family portraits. But within moments, that tranquility would be shattered forever. Lyle and Erik Menendez, armed with two 12-gauge shotguns, entered the room and opened fire. Jose was struck in the head, killed instantly. Kitty tried to run, but the boys continued firing. 5 more shots. The final bullet was fired point blank into her face. It was brutal, unthinkable, senseless, or so it seemed. When police arrived, the scene was carnage. Blood, bullet casings, and the bodies of 2 once powerful parents. Yet, there were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared stolen. It wasn't a robbery. This was something else. And then came the most curious clue of all. Lyle and Erik called 911. Lyle on 911 call.
Someone killed my parents.
The brothers wept. They played the part of grieving sons, devastated, confused, desperate for answers. And for a time, the police believed them. But behind the sorrow, something wasn't right. In the months following the murders, the Menendez brothers did something unexpected. They went shopping. Lyle bought a Porsche. Erik hired a tennis coach. Together, they spent hundreds of thousands on luxury goods, travel, and entertainment. Grieving children, or murderers hiding in plain sight? The Beverly Hills police began to suspect something more sinister. But without direct evidence, no murder weapons, no witnesses, they were stuck. It wasn't until Erik cracked under pressure that the truth began to surface. He confessed to his psychologist, Dr. Jerome Oziel, detailing the entire crime. And that confession would blow the case wide open. Dr. Oziel was stunned. Erik told him everything. The planning, the fear, the resentment, how they waited for the right night, how they executed it. And most shockingly, he claimed it wasn't about money, it was about survival. Erik said they were victims, that Jose had sexually abused him for years, that their mother had known but stayed silent. Dr. Ozil recorded the sessions, and when his mistress threatened to expose him, he turned the tapes over to police. That's when the arrest came. Both brothers were charged with murder. The Menendez trial became a media sensation. Televised from start to finish, it captivated millions. Were these boys cold-blooded killers? Or were they broken children, pushed to the brink by years of abuse? The defense painted a portrait of horror, childhood rape, emotional manipulation, psychological torture. They claimed the brothers believed it was the only way out. But the prosecution argued this was all an act, a calculated story made to justify greed and murder. The jury couldn't decide. 2 trials ended in deadlock. In the 3rd trial, things changed. Cameras were banned. The defense was limited. The narrative shifted. In 1996, Lyle and Erik were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The verdict divided the public. Some believed justice had been served. Others saw it as a miscarriage. Victims punished for defending themselves. To this day, the case remains one of the most debated in true crime history. Decades later, the Menendez brothers remain behind bars, housed in the same California prison. They've spoken publicly, appeared in documentaries, and gained a surprising wave of sympathy from younger generations on platforms like TikTok and YouTube. In 2023, new claims emerged, potentially supporting the brothers' original abuse allegations. The case is once again under scrutiny. Were Lyle and Erik truly monsters? Or were they the product of unchecked generational trauma? The truth may never be fully known. This was the story of the Menendez brothers: privilege, abuse, and murder. Like and subscribe for more real crime stories, turn on notifications, because the next case might be even darker.